Spring training is officially underway in Dunedin, Florida, as the Blue Jays get ready for a season with high expectations. Hey, everyone. Welcome into another episode of Long Ball. Rob Wong joined alongside by Toronto Sun Blue Jays beat writer Rob Longley, who, as you can tell, is in Dunedin at the Blue Jays Spring Training Complex. And, Rob, it's definitely a sight for sore eyes with all the baseball videos coming out of Florida as the offseason is coming to an end. Let's talk about some of the storylines in camp so far in the first few days, and want to begin with Alek Manoah. I know you wrote about him recently. It was a tough way for his year to end, the way it did with that subpar performance against Seattle in the playoffs. But what are his expectations heading into 2023?
Well, Rob, yeah, it's great to be down here. Obviously, there's a lot of storylines with this team, new players, new manager running his first spring training, and lots of returning players that have big expectations for 2023. And certainly Alek Manoah is among those. And you know, nobody really had a whole lot of time to talk to him after that Game 1 loss back in October. He took it really hard. He was one of the guys who sat down at his locker for, seemed like hours and didn't want to move. But I had a great chat with him here on Monday morning, and, you know, he was pretty resilient. He had a great offseason. You could tell physically he looks even bigger than he did before in terms of the muscular part of him. And, he focused on a few things. He told me that, you know, one of the things he'd really like to cut down on in 2023 is hit batters. He led the American League in that last year, so he wants to be a little bit more precise. What I like about him is he always seems to be wanting to evolve. And for a young pitcher who's already accomplished a fair bit, I think that says a lot about him. But also his drive, his engine is what really attracts him to the fans and especially the Blue Jays management and coaching staff. He's such a determined guy when he's on the mound. He's determined to win a ball game, even if he doesn't have his best stuff, and you know, to have that kind of a warrior, for lack of a better term, every 5 days, it's a real plus for a lineup. But yeah, he took that loss hard. He told me it took him a couple of weeks to get over it. He spent some time on the beach, and then he picked himself up and got to work. And he's determined to take his career to the next level on what already has been a pretty impressive arc.
Meanwhile, a healthy George Springer would go a long way to helping this team pick up a lot of victories, Rob. How is he looking and feeling so far after off-season elbow surgery?
Well, he said it pretty succinctly himself this week, Rob. He said it feels good to feel good. And you know, he then went into a little bit of detail about how much pain he played through last year. He refused to talk about it last year. He basically gave us the old "it is what it is." But every day he came to the ballpark, they had no idea if he'd be in the lineup. That's how bad his elbow was. I mean, it was to the point where he would take a swing and it looked like that arm was ready to fall off. But surgery went well. They had it immediately after the season in October. He didn't start to have to go through some baseball activities until January, so he's feeling fit and fresh and looking good. I've seen him in the cage and I've seen him in the field, and he kind of looks like the healthy George Springer that this team wants and needs. You know, when they signed him to that 6-year, $150 million deal, they knew they were getting a guy who had a bit of an injury history, but they certainly were expecting that you could get 150 games out of him or more. And the hope, obviously, around here right now is that if you get that kind of a George Springer, one of the best leadoff hitters in baseball, all of a sudden that lineup gets a lot better. And, you know, they'll do whatever they can to keep him healthy. But having that arm fixed up and having him come here fresh and enthused, I think certainly sets a tone for what the Jays will hope will be the best season of George Springer here yet.
Lastly, what have been some of the more interesting storylines you've picked up on so far at camp that we should be keeping an eye on for the rest of spring?
Well, just looking at the way they're going about business, Rob, it seems to be a little bit more regimented than we've seen in the past. There's obviously, from John Schneider on down through the coaching staff, there's obviously an emphasis on taking care of the little things, being very detail-oriented, the types of things, the mistakes, the mental mistakes, the fielding type mistakes that can cost you ball games, a run at a time. And there was clearly a sense from this coaching staff that there was a little bit too much of that last year, whether it was lack of focus, whether it was lack of detail in preparation. And that's something that they're determined to get rid of. And they're doing it right from day one here at spring training. And when you get that ingrained in a player, you hope that when you get to July and August and September, everything is routine and you don't make as many mistakes, you don't make as many errors, and that attention to detail leads to more wins, quite simply.
Well, as it stands right now, if you're a betting person, the Blue Jays have the 7th best odds to win the World Series. We'll see how those things change as the weeks progress. But as always, you can find Rob's Blue Jays coverage at the Toronto Sun and on Twitter at Longley Sun Sport.